so with ballistics, I see the shape of bullets and understand how slippery they're going to be in the air. I see when it hits gel what it's going to do. And there's a lot of, I think that's a gifting. And so there's a lot of things where my intuition has been spot on. If you're a good businessman, you will be judged as a good businessman. If you profess Christ, you will be judged as Christ. And so if you fall short in anything, people will put that out on your business, and so they're looking for that. Evil is on a ticking time bomb, and it's coming down. And so they have divided time. And so evil has a sun-based time frame, and God has a seasonal, daily, weekly, monthly, lunar cycles, yearly. The movement of the planets is his timeline. And so we divided the time into 12 watches, and then we did the same thing with the moon. And so now we have 24 hours. And I think as an entrepreneur, the thing that if I could impart some piece of wisdom is just relax. You don't have to be used all the time. When you are used, be ready, be rested, have that Sabbath, and do the thing that you're meant for. If we were trying to load ammo with welding gloves, it would be a mistake. If we were trying to weld with latex gloves, it would be a mistake.
Oh, and what does G9 stand for again? Maybe I missed it.
So in rifles and in artillery, there's 8 G scales, G1 through G8. Everyone knows G1s, G7s. Ours have a different flight path when we get to the rifle. And so there is a different parabolic curve. We called it G9 to kind of call out that we're doing something different. And so the other thing is that it's a really safe bullet. That's why that was the point of having it in insured security, is that it will stop inside reliably, and so they don't overpenetrate. The reason being, a hollow point is kind of a snowflake. It has to dynamically change its shape in order to stop. But we're getting wounds like this out of bullets that don't change. And so you can see how we're casting off a lot of energy, and we're doing better than hollow points. We do that through the shape. Well, that shape is ready as it sits in the magazine, as it sits in the barrel, as it flies through the air. It doesn't have to do anything to change.
Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm excited about this episode. I've got Josh Mankey here of G9 Ammo. I met him, what's it been, like a year, 2 maybe? SHOT Show a couple ago.
A little longer, I think.
Yeah. That'd be probably 2 years and some change. And we were together on, it was then called Jesus and Beers, in SHOT Show, so
on the floor.
on the floor. And I'll never forget it, because right before we queued it up, I started having this like kind of high gravity, like come to Jesus moment where I'm like, am I about to be the guy on the street corner with the repent sign during SHOT Show? And Satan tries to get in your head a little bit. He's like, yo, what are your sponsors gonna say? Like, geez, man, and I'm thinking to myself, like, well, who cares? But it's just, we have loudspeakers, and we're gonna talk about God and guns. And then of course, once we got into it, just the Holy Spirit took over, and it was just such an honor to be part of that. So
absolutely, it was a really good time. Stephen Prowse calls me, and so I run across SHOT Show. He says, I need some help moving furniture and stuff. And I get there, and we're like 5 minutes out, and he's like, listen, I didn't want to stress you on your way over here, but you're going to be on it. You're one of the guests. Like drinking from a fire.
Oh yeah, that's Steven for you. Just like, oh yeah, by the way, the pizza party wasn't the point. Here's a microphone.
Yeah.
When are we going to do this? Now, he's awesome, man. So, but it was cool because I got to listen to like what you carry as a man of God, the fruit of your life, and what you've been able to do. You just mentioned your son coming back from West Point. That's big fruit, and the way you raise men, and so that was really one of the massive drivers for me want to talk with you here. And then also G9, like you guys are doing awesome things in the industry. So and ballistics, and this is the ammo I carry, you guys. If you've ever been wondering, again, I get the question, this is what I carry. And in this episode, we're going to go into the things that the man of God aspects and things and everything about Josh. And then also we're going to get into some physical stuff, some tactical stuff, and talk a little bit about the ammo and why I carry it and believe it's the best personal protection ammo in the game right now. So let's go.
Boom! I want to invite you guys to the Man of Peace protocols and implementation groups. So if you've been watching the podcast and you're like, yo, this is pretty cool, I'm really liking the vibe, all the things, we have underneath the show, in the show notes, hit the link, and we have implementation groups. We meet monthly. We are a fellowship, the Man of Peace Fellowship. We have live events. We have all kinds of things. Get into the implementation groups. We meet over Zoom. We are going through life together, working on being the best sons of God, men of peace we can be. We're working on making sure that we're operating at the highest levels in spirit, soul, and body at all times. So if you love the vibe of the podcast, I want to encourage you, take the next step, go to the next level, join the implementation groups, join the actual fellowship, meet other men of peace. Let's train together. Let's work together. Let's do life together. Let's execute on the will of the Father together. Blessed are the peacemakers. You guys know the rest. Enjoy the rest of the podcast.
What would you say, Josh, just how, the beginning of your origin story? Where'd you meet Christ? Like, how did that happen? Did you grow up in church, or, how was that story? How'd that come?
Yeah, I have a memory of we attended church a bunch, and my mom grew up in a Christian household, and so she was kind of there. I think my dad probably got saved shortly after I was born, and so I grew up in that. It became real, and I remember a salvation conversion experience on the steps of an outbuilding of the church when I was 11. And so I think there's the verse about working out your own salvation with fear and trembling, and that I don't believe it's a lightning bolt from heaven and all of a sudden you're there. I think it's a lifelong process, and it's probably they talk about losing salvation. And so if we look at eternal things, and so I'm going to screw this up right away and
I love it.
tell you where I kind of maybe differ from a lot of things, but I believe that we're citizens of heaven, that we were known. So before
The foundations of the world,
the pillars of the earth, I knew you. And I think that's also why we're to honor our fathers and mothers. So family is very important to me, because I think we had that conversation with God, and He's like, "Hey, I got a tough spot. I want you in this one." And so we could have said no or not, or had that conversation. So I think that people have told me I don't have to honor my parents because of this or something, and I believe that there's no excuses on that. You probably had pre-knowledge, and so I think salvation is something to lose, not to gain. We're here, we're citizens of heaven, we're sent here. The earth is the place where God's spirit is diminished. And so the struggle is within the souls of man. And so within the chests of mankind is where God's spirit can be totally manifest and glorified. And so, and then that's why all of the good versus evil comes down to that. And so, I believe your salvation and is a continual path that even Paul said, so that I don't preach the gospel and lose the prize.
In vain, 100%, man. No, I love it, bro. That was a whole entire sermon right there. You guys, we're done. We can go, you can go home, but you hit the important parts of it, man. And I tend to agree with you, and I love where the Bible talks about where we're foreknown. We were foreordained, foreknown before the foundations of the world. We were glorified, justified. All of these things before even coming here, man. It's such an honor. And I've noticed too, I feel like there's two dates, right? So you're like me. I grew up in church. My mom was, I was watching 4 televangelists before going to Christian school. Like my mom was getting the word deep in my heart from, and it's paid off tremendous dividends. I feel so blessed that, but there's like a second time when really I decided to really begin living for Christ. And this was like, I always kind of did my thing, but then I went and got my, did my little squiggle after I got out of the Marine Corps, my experimental phase, and then came back. Was there a time like as a man when you really, that you would say you really Christ became real to you, or did you just kind of grow up in it and stay in it?
No, it was during my early 20s. That was the foundational point. So when I was off on my own, making my own choices, there was kind of a pivotal moment where I had the chance to be dishonorable and gain the world,
Yeah.
or give it up for morals. And at that point in time, I chose the high road. And so then, if you do that, and then later on you lose it, you lost it all.
Yeah.
And so at
Yeah.
that point, it felt like I was putting a poor analogy, but money in the bank, and so you want to invest well after that. So that was a early 20s. That's I went through, and people have cell phones now, so our memories are being degraded. We don't look up phone numbers or anything like that. And when I was in college, I had some 400 verses memorized. Everyone thought I was always studying for a test because I would just sit there. But it was one of those things where if I could draw from it, I'm highly dyslexic. And so reading doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And it's not a way that I take a lot of information in. And dyslexia is not an inability to read. It has very little to do with reading, but what it is that you think differently, and so can be a huge advantage. And so when and then back to the foreknowledge and the placement of people in the world, and then honoring your parents, that's comforting to me because I was 38 years old before the first person told me I was smart. And so with that, it turned out that my fifth grade teacher famously said, "Listen, there's a lot of smart people in this world. They are, doctors and lawyers, and they need people to take care of them, to sweep down the floors and take out the trash and all this. Josh was going to find his place in this world, and so don't worry about him. There's places for him." And at that
Yeah.
point in time, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm stupid," and
Yeah.
he announces this to the class as a favor. And so with that, when you're built differently mentally on it, and there's no fit, that's where G9 is such a good thing for me,
Yeah.
because that dyslexia and problem with reading is P's, B's, D's, Q's. They all are the same thing because I can flip them around in my mind, and it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
And so I can, when I worked in auto body, I could see the internal parts of cars and how they would work together, and then hear the click and the noise that they should be making, and so I could diagnose things. And I
Wow.
thought that was normal. And there was only a few people that like saw the noise happening.
Saw
And
the noise. I love
yeah,
this. This is
and
so
so
good.
when you talk about then, Tesla famously was trying to get funding for a motor, I think it was, and he gets this guy, and he's totally on board and everything. He's like, "How many motors have you tried?" He goes, "Well, this is my 18th or whatever rendition, and I've tried all these, and this one runs the best, and it's really good." And he goes, "Oh, I'd like to see it." He goes, "Well, you can't see it. The drawing's right here. If you want to look at that." And he goes, "No, I'd like to see the motor." And he goes, "He said you've tested them." "Yeah, I've tested all of them, but I've tested them in my mind." And so he was at a level where he could run these things and get it in his head. And so with ballistics, I see the shape of bullets and understand how slippery they're going to be in the air. I see when it hits gel what it's going to do, and there's a lot of I think that's a gifting, and so there's a lot of things where my intuition has been spot on.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And it just goes right back to what you're talking about that, Christ, he knew us before we were formed in our mother's womb, before the foundation of the world. He gave you skills and abilities to execute on what you're executing on right now. And you found that probably through having a relationship with him, and him like coaching you when to zig, when to zag through life. And
Sure.
I just hope guys listening find that inspirational, because I'm the same way. Dyslexia, always the last kid finishing my tests in school because I read slow,
Yep.
like,
Been
and
there.
and sounding things out. When we watch movies, I never finish the words on the bottom of the screen. Like, I just don't read fast enough. They always, so I have to, but it's caused me to completely come up with all these shortcuts in life. And
Oh
so,
yeah.
and if you would look at my productivity, like, I'm surprised when I find someone that gets as much done, because I've come up with all these. It's been a blessing.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting that when you're talking about being able to see the sounds, like, this is the way my mind. When you said that, I was like, oh my goodness, that's what that is. Because I'm always seeing things like that.
Sure.
So I solved my world. Um,
Engineers are that way. Like my oldest son he graduated out of Embry Riddle, and he said it is the most eclectic group of of dyslexic. Like everyone there is dyslexic, and
Heck yeah.
he fit in. He's probably more dyslexic than me, and he is a phenomenal engineer. Like we
Wow.
identified that early, and we helped him get onto that path. But he's going to do amazing things in the world.
Yeah, no, I have no doubt. I have no doubt. How would you say, for guys, young guys that are listening to this, how would you say your faith has made you a better man, businessman, father, husband, the things that are important to us? Let's stretch into that a little bit.
Sure. If you want an easy road in business, don't do it. Like
Ha!
leave
Let's
the straight
go.
path, and so if you and I think that that was the path I was on, is that there was these compartments and like little cells, and you could fill up these things. And so very much a great Christian when it was appropriate to be, but an outstanding businessman, when you're doing business. And so there was a change for me, and it was the only time I think I've had like a true vision. People talk about like I see things, I understand things. There's things there, but to have a vision, and it was I was driving on I-80 in the middle of Wyoming, and I look out and see all the sagebrush, and I'm like, this is just absolute like worthless ground here. That there's nothing there, and God like snaps and corrects me and says, I've created this. I created it for a purpose. I created it for a reason. There's value here. And at that point in time, I saw the idea of this slice of pie that went down to the center of the earth, and that it could be full of diamonds, it could be full of gold. It has all these values. There's oil there. There's everything else. So I'm looking at antelope and sagebrush, thinking it's worthless. And at that point in time, it felt like all of creation was there and I'm in the 50-yard line at a stadium, and nothing was announced or anything, but I knew that that's Mammon and that's God. And he said, choose. And that was the one
Wow.
thing. And instantly, before I could form a word, my heart already had it. And Mammon was seething angry. And it was this point. And that started, I went 42 months without payroll starting that day. Like that was the end of payroll. And so we had just moved out of Idaho, sold my house, lived off of savings, went down to zero, any plan that we had, anything. And so I had an easy time in business, and we could my wife and I did really well. She came with large student loans when we got married, and we had those paid off right away. And we got cars. We got we were doing awesome. Everything was there.
Yeah.
On track to do all this stuff. And that day, all of my money friends abandoned me. And so there was like this odor or something on me that they just all floated. And so
that's awesome.
Through a period where there was not enough for payroll, and so it was a testing point. And again, one of those things, when you pay a price for your faith, you're there. And so you're going to pay that because there'll be a time that you're going to struggle against the spirit of mammon. And it's not money; it is the spirit that controls money.
Right.
And so if you live your faith out, and the other thing is that if you're a good businessman, you will be judged as a good businessman. If you profess Christ, you will be judged as Christ. And so if you fall short in anything, people will put that out on your business, and so they're looking for that. And so it's I think it's a hard road. I would encourage everyone to do it after they count the cost. And so if you're going to do that, because you can't
put the toothpaste back in the tube, man.
Yeah, you can't get the table either. And so the failure is the turning back. I had this is maybe 12 years ago. I had my martial arts instructor. We were working with an aluminum knife, and so it was somewhat rounded, but it hurt. And so as we were doing this, he was just working. So we were working something called chain of the weapon. So two hands on it, try to disarm it, and I missed it, and he got me in the ribs enough. It hurt. And so then the next time I went in, and he knew what I was going to do, so I went heavy for the knife, and he pulled it back just a little bit, and I grabbed the hold of it by the blade end. And so I was 20 pounds heavier, and probably had a little more strength on him. And so I worked him over and got the knife away. And I said, in reality, though, I grabbed the blade end. What would have that been like? And he goes, if you get a hold of the knife, you never let go. And starting off in business felt a lot like grabbing hold of the blade end of the knife. And it was painful and everything, but you got to not let go. You got to see it through.
Yep. And I would say too, man, business having been to war, I would say businesses and even civilian life in some ways has been scarier than being in war
Sure.
because the various ways that it grades on you. Like when you get, I'm with Viktor Frankl, there should be a statue of responsibility to balance out the Statue of Liberty because freedom without responsibility is death, and I've seen it bear out in the lives of my buddies, but like as an entrepreneur, it's like as a civilian, your freedom is some kind of mirror, in terms of like what you're able to get done, how far you're able to get, how far you can get your family down the field, like the quality of life as a man. It's like this kind of interesting mirror. But then as a business owner, I personally am more afraid of my guys not getting payroll than getting in a firefight right now. Like I just can't, So when I went through the same crushing, but mine was just like year before last, like this last kind of year, and basically God was like, everything you're doing, it will no longer work. Like he just was like here are the pillars to your house. And I was like, and I've been around the block with him for a bit, so I was kind of like, okay, Father, we're doing a desert period. I got this. I know you're in control. I know, but he's like, and he just knew he was going to take me past my point. And when the purpose of the training is to take you to a place you've never been, but what happened through that was he showed me another dimension of who he was that brought me closer to him in a way that I had never experienced. And I think about that theory that someone put out about the angels in heaven when they talk about how they cry, holy, holy, holy. That's in the Bible. But they talk about how the reason they cry holy is that every point whatever seconds that is, 1 point whatever seconds, God shows another dimension of himself. And they're mind blown again and they're like, holy, 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 And that's what it was like when I got to the end of that desert period and he made me trust in him every week, man, for about a year. It was wild, the attacks that came. And what you were saying, to tie this back in also, what you were saying about think very carefully before you represent Christ in the marketplace, because that's when this period started. I know that he's taking me to a new place, but he had to really perfect my heart and build out the pillars and the software and the processes in me to be able to survive and thrive where I'm now at, which is kind of like a little promised land period. Like, it's all seasonal though, guys. So what you're saying just really resonates with me, because the second I said Jesus' name out loud on my platform, the spiritual warfare kicked up, and I got to see a whole nother dimension of my father. It's a priceless experience. Anyways, awesome stuff.
Right before that, you probably prayed that God would bless your business and that he would have authority and he would reign in your business. And so you do those things and you get them. But if you want to be strong, you got to lift big weights.
Yeah.
And so there are those in life. If you want to look good, don't put any weight on the bar, and you'll have perfect form and great endurance. And so and spiritually, we look at these things that would be so silly on the physical side, but then you have to look at them spiritually as well. So if you want to be strong, you're gonna put the work in.
100%.
I think that are you familiar with an author, Kevin Weaver, who wrote the book Reorient?
No.
So he talks about, I think there's a dozen words in there that he redefines the biblical definitions. And the book, I went through one of his courses, and it is life-changing.
Really?
But he redefines the word disciple. And until that time, I would have called myself a Christian. I absolutely don't call myself a Christian. I call myself a disciple.
Let's
and the
go.
difference is paramount. And so a disciple looks like one of three things. It looks like a special forces soldier. It looks like an Olympic athlete, or it looks like a hardworking farmer. And so if you put those in categories, obviously the special forces soldier is at the top. And it's not, because the special forces soldier, although well-trained and well-disciplined, waits on orders, and he doesn't function without orders. And that's your entry level to being a disciple. And so when you first become a disciple, you pray for God's will and you hear it, and then you go do it. Now the Olympic athlete understands the game, and he's 4 years out.
Yeah.
He has the discipline to get in the pool, to get on the track, to whatever he's doing. He has the discipline to do this. And so he beats his body, and he does not beat the air like a madman. He trains, and so it even talks about that scripturally. And so the Olympic athlete is the next level. Well, the hardworking farmer is the entrepreneur, and that's the highest level of discipleship. And so you have to get up and that you're going to put the seed in the ground. God's going to do the work and putting the rain out there. You know that you're going to hire people. God's going to send them. And so you have to have this relationship where you're making choices and you're partnering with God. And so it's not this event you're going for, and it's not the chaos of war. It is that the entire world is in front of you. You have to make all these choices, and you gotta make enough for your family to survive. And then there's the hired man's family, and then and you start taking on all these things. Well, you're leading a community when you get there. And I think there is no escaping the rigors of discipleship when you hit that entrepreneurial state. And so you have to through your life like build to those things.
Yeah, no, 100%. And then as you have these victories with him, you end up with more faith, so then he can take you farther. Like, hey, we're gonna go to you see, you get to the top of your mountain and you're like, wow, God, this was so great. And he's like, hey, look over there, and you're like, oh, man, such an honor.
Continuing growth.
Oh, 100%. And you continue to grow. And he shows you how much more he is, and you start taking on greater and greater and greater things, and then once you know who he is, man, that's what the whole thing, in my opinion, is all about. He's building you out on the journey. He's revealing himself as well. And it gives you more ability to build his kingdom. And I have a theory. I don't know what you think about it, but I think the entrepreneur, the businessman, I just feel like it's more in line with kingdom principles for how we're supposed to live, as Christians, because there's the seed time and harvest principle. I'm not giving my time, there's a time for everything as you develop, of course. I'm not saying being an employee is wrong, but I just feel like being a business owner is so in line with the principles I see in the Bible. And you have arguably more mastery over your time, depending on how things are going. But I think there's something to it, and living by faith, plant the seeds. Considerations.
Sure. No, I would agree with that. The Bible talks about not to work another man's field, and so you're to be an entrepreneur. And I think, but you don't start entrepreneurship at 3 years old. Like there's a process to get there, and so you have to work in another man's field to understand it. And even if it's only in your father's, there is again that generational thing. It's they're there for a reason, and so entrepreneurship is something I think everyone should strive for. And it doesn't mean you need to have your own Fortune 500 company. Our original task, our original job was to be a gardener. And so everybody has a patch of earth that they can grow something. And I believe growing something brings about healing in your soul. My wife took up beekeeping. And so beekeepers, interestingly enough, it's the profession that has the longest lifespan. And so you have to be calm around bees. Like they will correct you if you're nervous around bees. And so the vibration of bees, there's a lot of biblical references about find and eat honey, and there was salves and balms made out of propolis. And so these things, I think you need to connect to nature, and you need to see that as well. And so as I experience more and more stress, the temptation is to work harder and do longer hours. You have to do those maintenance things. And so I work quite a bit with Neil Dyer of Warriors Rise. And I watch him, and he puts out effort all the time. And so we provide accountability for one another. And I asked him, like, what's going on? He goes, you know what, the big thing I got to fix is I got to get myself a Sabbath. I got to get back down to having downtime. And that's the temptation, is that there's too much to do, so work harder. And the reality is you got to get that downtime so that God can direct you. And it's, if we got a segue here, an interesting thing is the Cairo and the Chronos times. And so you have God's timeline and you have evil's timeline. And so you got to remember that God's timeline, he's apart from it, and it's infinite. And so it's a resource without end for him. Evil is on a ticking time bomb, and it's coming down. And so they have divided time. And so evil has a sun-based time frame, and God has a seasonal daily, weekly, monthly, lunar cycles, yearly, the movement of the planets is his timeline. And so we divided the time into 12 watches, and then we did the same thing with the moon. And so now we have 24 hours. And if you look at where the time really got critical is we would have these contracts for shipping. So the first corporations were shipping corporations, and so you were required to go from here to here with cargo. And so that was the first really stressful job there was, because you insured it yourself. It was on you to get that cargo, and so you owned it. If the ship wrecked, it was your debt. And if you came in late, that was your debt. The other thing is that that's where taxes started. And so they start these shipping corporations, and the captains would wear a clock around their neck. And so you can imagine the weight of this. Well, they had to get an hour, they had a 60 tooth gear. And to make that gear run at the right speed, they had a reduction that was also a 60 tooth gear. And so you got the minute and the second out of that. In 1964, we continued to divide these times down. 1964, we got to where we could have a millionth of a second, and we could measure it. And so and Satan's time is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And so he's dividing it. He wants you to experience that stress that he has. And so that's his that's Chronos, and that's the timeline. Starts in the morning. So wake up. If you woke up early enough, you get breakfast. If not, get to work. You gotta pay your bills. You gotta get out there. So get out there, get after it. If there's time, take a lunch. If not, get back to it. And if you did a good job, you may leave on time. If not, you stay and miss out with your family time and everything else. God's timeline is different. God's time starts, instead of at the dawn, it starts at the sunset. And so the first thing you do is gather those that you love, and you have a big meal. Like, just sit down. It is the leisurely meal of the day. There's nothing to do after it. Then go take an 8-hour nap. When you're fully rested, wake up and walk around the day with your father, and he'll send you on little errands that he plans out. And so that's his timeline. There is no stress in that. And so the time, if you believe that, like I start my day every day at sunset when I learn that, and I don't care when the sun rises or not. I don't get up at the same time every day. Renee and I have made it our habit that we get up at 3, probably from Stephen Press's proddings there, but we get up 3. I was waking up at 3 anyway. So we get up and we pray. And when we're done, we'll either go back to bed or we'll start the day. And so there's no set schedule in the morning for us. But then in the evening, we make a big deal out of dinner. And so that's
Let's go.
And that's the way that we do it. So I don't have these artificial, and I don't even follow time. Like I have to keep track of it to line up with everyone else. But doing that, it takes the stress out. So these shipping corporations, they have this tick, 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 seconds going away, and you got to get after it. And so that's where stress came in. Then they were paid in gold. And so they would take gold from one to the next. And so then you would have to pay the tax there. And so you'd have to take your gold, it would be melted down, and the king of that land would then stamp that gold with his face on it. And he could take some because he stamped it. And so that's where taxes came in. And so we started corporations in the shipping corporations between the 1400s, 1600s. This came about, and that's where so much of the stress came from. And corporations to this day still use those languages, because this guy's a loose cannon at shipping. He's a board member, shipping. Show this guy the ropes, shipping. This guy runs a tight ship. This place needs to be ship shape. There's all kinds of vernacular. The ship high in transit was, get this shit off the deck. And so then you couldn't get that stuff wet. And so there's so much of our everyday stuff that comes out of that. And there are precepts that are put out there to cause us stress. And I think these stresses pull us away from true communion with God.
Wow. No, I that was once again. All right, guys, we're done. That was just a whole full like you just cleaned the whole thing up. I love it. I absolutely agree with you on the time thing. I didn't know the Cairo Chronos situation. That's super interesting. Something God's been dealing with me on is just like how much I'm striving all the time to get things done. It's like I'm just like a horse. Like I'm always just like going, eating up the ground. And he's just like, I'm getting that whisper that's like, I mean, is this how I work? Like he's like, when I give you things, like it's never because of my striving. ever. Not one time. It's always like I'm like, God will give me like the vision, like this is where we're going, this is what we're doing, and then I'll get in there and be like, we need to fight to get this. And I'll like build a whole Tower of Babel and do all these things. And then at some point he'll come in and like just like move it out of the way and like it'll die. And I'm like, why, God? You told me. And then I'll turn over and he'll be like, here you go. And then I'll be like, oh. That's what and so lately he's been kind of like watching me kind of strive a little. I've been watching me also kind of strive a little bit. And so I'm kind of what you said kind of helped me kind of make more sense of it, because I've been pushing for a long time. I'm in a stage of entrepreneurial experience now where I'm here at this desk more than I've ever been. Okay. Up until like maybe last year, the end of last year, I was on the road multiple times every single month. I hadn't spent a single whole entire month in just one state for honestly for years. So I think probably I have some of my biology that's like even getting like over trauma of just being on the road, even psychologically. And then the other thing I think that was really good is that principle of divine portion. I feel like when you're constantly striving through the Sabbath, like from Genesis to all the way through to Revelation, you see that God sets a little bit aside for himself. He encourages you to set some money aside to honor him. And that's how I look at it, man. When I can't set time aside for God, whether it's within 24 hours, within a week, then I start to look at the altars of my heart like, hey, bro, what are you running on? That your prioritization is starting to get that divine portion is his, and I find that when I honor that, he honors me in a lot of different ways,
Sure.
you know. Yeah, man, that was good stuff. Let's see here. What would you say, this stuff is so good. I know I wanted to transition into talking about G9, and the business aspect of it. What's G9 mean? How did that business come about?
So we had there was a shooting at a church that was a couple miles from ours. It was a snowy day. The shooter went in, and I believe that they shot and killed 5 YWAM members, if I remember right. And so they were there after hours. The law enforcement then, which was, even though it was so close, it was a different city, they called and said, the guy's likely breaking into churches to try to get out of the cold. That was the working premise of the day. And so we have both of our boys are little, and we go drop them off in the nursery. Separation anxiety, whatever, takes too long. Renee and I are walking across the campus to help with the junior high. And so the pastor who's supposed to be speaking at this moment comes up and he slides, almost hits us, and has his window down. He says, "Are you carrying a gun?" And I was like, "What?" Junior high student said what? And I said, "No, I'm not." He goes, "I need you to go home and get one. Here's what's going on." And so I go and get my gun, and so they explained that they just wanted us to search the church. And so there's a safety team. The safety team was not up to par in a lot of ways, and so they said, "We'd like you to take over." And I said, "Okay, I'll do these things, but I want to have some control over how we do things. So there has to be a training budget. There has to be these things. And if you want me to do this, we have to prioritize it." Well, they actually prioritize it. They did it. And so we get to it, and I'm like, the Uncle Mike's holsters have to go away. Probably don't carry the Makarov anymore. And so we get in there and we clean some of that up. And I said, "Okay, you two that make semi-wad cutters in your garage, no more of that. Because the white box got to go."
Yeah.
And so I said, we're going to do Hydra shocks and Gold Dot. Those are the two that local law enforcement had, and that's what we recommended. And so a couple months go by, and no one switched it out. And it's too expensive. It doesn't work in my gun. I can't. The stuff I make works just as good. And so I had all these things. And so they consented to training, so much so in one of the warehouse buildings we put up a dojo, and we did qualifications. We instituted the air marshal course. We do all these things, and we're getting it, and it's having a lot of fruit, and they will not budge on the ammo. And so at that point in time, I was working at a body shop, and they had a town a little bit away had a Bonnie and Clyde style bank robbery, and this the woman in the back seat of this Honda had shot, if I remember, it was either 2 or 3 officers through the car. She's shooting Beretta with Winchester white box 115s in it. So
Mhm.
not
Just your
great ammo.
standard white box ball ammo, just
Your
you
cheapest thing
know.
at Walmart.
Yep.
And so all these guys they had 40s and 45s, and they did
Of
not
course
make
it
it
did.
into the package strand. They had gold dots, so they have a bonded bullet, high sectional density, and it does not go through. It doesn't go through the back seat, through the deck lid into the, and so they can't get it into the passenger compartment. They wreck and they end up shooting him. I think it was with an M4 through the backlash or something. And so this car actually ends up getting towed to a place that I was at for the impound there.
Hmm.
And so I look at this thing, and one of the guys comes out, and I knew him. He was a friend of mine. He's like, this doesn't work. And so I said, I'm having the same thing at church, and I'm recommending these things, and they're pushing away from it. And he goes, I want to find out how this was. So he got me access to a bunch of the FBI reports, and so we kind of went through and categorized them. And it turns out, for the most part, the cheap ammo was working better, and it was because it was very barrier resistant.
Yep.
And so in these things they had and they had a lot of failures, and so hollow points hadn't quite hit their pinnacle yet. But so in this thinking on it, I get an idea of what a pistol round should look like. I try it out, and I was part of we formed a company called Safe Worship, and it was three of us, and we had put on M1034 training, which Jack Neville's was the instructor on it, and we called it M1034 because I've not come to bring peace, but I've come to bring a sword. And so there's going to be violence, and so on that day of violence, be prepared for it. And so he had a 2-day class that was all about dojo and range time, and it was awesome. Like I've never been to a class that was so comprehensive, or that he trained at that high level.
Wow.
And so we would be doing retention shooting morning of day 2 usually, and it just got better from there.
Heck
And,
yeah.
on these things, we would actually euthanize a pig and then shoot it with everyone's carry ammo. And his point is we put up paper behind it, and then we see that these things burn right through, and they hit the berm and they create dust, and there's a lot of velocity on it. And he's like, that's lethal. And so don't shoot inside your sanctuary. And so everyone would bring in their best ammo, and everything shot through. And so then I say, I've got an experimental something. Do you mind if I shoot this one? I shoot it, and it puts a hole in the pig, and stuff comes back out. And it doesn't go through. Like it put all the energy there, and it reversed. Like there was enough movement that and so here's a guy that is the most stoic person I think I've ever met. There's I watched him be put in a lot of pain, and he'll giggle about it, and it doesn't affect him. He stares at me, chin on the floor, for like 30 seconds, doesn't say a word, most uncomfortable thing ever. We're going to lunch, we need to talk. And so the next thing he says is, he goes, would that go through armor? I'm like, yeah, it would go through armor. I didn't know. It was just the reaction. He pulls out 3A armor, puts it on the pig, and it does the same thing, except it makes a bigger wound because it pushed the opening through there. And so we did that, and he had it. His background was Green Beret, retired sergeant major out of, I want to say, 7th Group, but he has a phenomenal history, and so for that he was able to make those introductions right away. And so in that, turns out SOCOM doesn't buy things from people working out of their garage. And so we refined it a little bit, but that original vision for what it was is still one of our law enforcement duty rounds, unchanged to this day. When I understood it better and I changed it to fix it, it actually lost efficiency, and we went back to the original plan. And so God had granted that. And so I spend at that time about 3.5, 4 years just gathering IP for patents. And so we got a multitude of different bullets, because we kind of started down a thread, and we went to basically the medical and aerospace fields. And so that first bullet, they actually modified a breast biopsy needle program. And so like they did it in this little tiny tube, and how they cut the tube to make it sharp, so it would actually take a core sample out rather than just do this. So they made 3 sharpened flutes on it. We have 3 sharpened flutes on ours, and that was the beginning. So we were using someone that worked in aerospace and not in the gun industry. So by going into that, it opened up these new possibilities. And so if you look at it, hollow points are basically Civil War. That's where they came out. So you have
Yeah.
a center fire, rim fire, case, powder inside. That was Civil War era. And so we haven't changed that much. And hollow points are,
Civil War era.
oh, sure.
Bro, I mean, just I didn't know that. I didn't know that because you know, we all think, but like, man, I just felt like you guys realize it what he just said. You know, okay, outstanding. Good to
So
understand.
to update this was really easy, and there was all kinds of ideas just laying on the ground. And so I feel like I got that first because I was being faithful in a capacity at a church. I was gifted the idea by God, and then to be faithful and follow that out from there. And so that's my gifting, and so that was when I said that was one of the first times I ever got called intelligent was when we took a setting up that safe worship company. We wanted to take a personality profile test and see right butts, right seats, make sure that everyone was doing their job to the fullest, and that was the right thing for them. Well, in that, I take this test, and just like you, I was the last one finished all the time. It's an online thing. I open it up, and I spend maybe 2 minutes on it, and the thing shuts off. And I'm like, I failed. I don't know what I did. And so the word association thing, and you just click on the ones that you feel are doing this. And so the guy that was, the guy's name was Dave that administered the test. He reads it out, and he's like, this person, and he describes him is a Moses figure. And he sees things from a high level, and he works on the macros. He can also get in there and he can talk to people, and he can be the righteous judge between two people. And so he was giving out these biblical things. And then I was like, oh, that's totally this guy. And then he describes the next one. That's this guy, and I knew all the players. Then he says, there's a guy that's highly intelligent, and he has a lot of mental endurance, probably doesn't sleep well. And he's like describing me. And the others in the group are like, oh, that's Joshua. And I did not recognize that in myself. And so then he called that out, and that was given to me right before like G9 was getting rolling. And so there was, and I think that was God's maybe anointing, but just that encouragement that someone's going to say that you could handle this, and that this is something that he put there. So he had an empty vessel, filled me full of ballistic ideas, calls it out publicly that I'm capable, and then sets it off. And that's the origin of G9 pretty succinctly.
That's awesome. That's so cool. I just love this stuff. Personally, I always use the term shell companies for Jesus. You know what I'm saying? Like building the kingdom with people that are building the kingdom. We got guys I mean, it's just an honor to do business with people that are just building the kingdom in the same way. It is amazing how God gives us. I know a lot of people are always looking for their purpose, and it's like, man, press into the Father. Your purpose is hidden in Him. And if you really are seeking first the kingdom and its righteousness, and you're trying to put Him first, you're making Him the King of Kings, like seeking Him first, and you will be in right standing with Him. And He'll know He can trust you, and all these things really do get added onto me. Every win I've had in my life, I can't take credit for, and it's the most beautiful thing ever. Because then my flesh wants to strive, right? Because then I'd be like, well, I need to protect this, and I need to, you know what I mean? I wouldn't be able to rest in Him, So it's really beautiful to see how that all played out. And I was looking at your website real quick too while I was.
So I have a bunch of different gloves, and I have these that I work with metal and they're welding gloves, and I have these that are chainsaw gloves. I have others that are there's latex gloves for when we're loading. We don't want the fingerprints on the ammo and all these things. And so if it would be like having a toolbox there, and you throw all the gloves in there and walk away, and they start arguing over who's the greatest one. And so
I love it.
They all have a purpose, and they all see those things. And so the master is going to grab the set of gloves that's right at that point in time. And I think as an entrepreneur, the thing that if I could impart some piece of wisdom is just relax. You don't have to be used all the time. When you are used, be ready, be rested, have that Sabbath, and do the thing that you're meant for. If we were trying to load ammo with welding gloves, it would be a mistake. If we were trying to weld with latex gloves, it would be a mistake, And so, and I see too much of that out of ego, out of hubris, people will jump on a situation that is not their calling, and not the thing that they should be in. And so I think you have to rest and relax and be called into something. And when you do that, it is glorious how easy it is. Because I'd
How
be
easy it
a
is.
failure in so many other things. We get to ballistics and I see it, I smell it, I hear it, like I understand it. And I'm not joking on that. Like I will, when a gun goes off and we're using
Yeah.
powder, if the powder's too slow, I will smell sulfur and I'll know, I'll know from the smell of it that we need to speed that powder up.
Oh
So
man.
it's one of those things that there's a lot of you'll be used mightily if you can allow yourself to be obscure in all these situations and sit in the toolbox until the creator's wanting to use you.
Yeah, yeah. Until you've reached that state, you're sitting there where he's got you, and the fruit's ready to be picked, man. What would you say, real quick as we wrap this up? I just want to show everyone this that I hadn't actually seen this on your website. This is the G9 that I carry. Oh,
Yep.
and what does G9 stand for again? Maybe I missed it.
So in rifles and in artillery, there's 8 G scales, G1 through G8. Everyone knows G1s, G7s. Ours have a different flight path when we get to the rifle, and so there is a different parabolic curve. We called it G9 to kind of call out that we're doing something different.
Oh, okay. I dig it. So this is what I've got locked and loaded. And then is there another type of ammo for duty, or is this exactly what everyone's carrying?
Yeah. So this is why you got to vote. This is the importance of good cause. And so we have there are certain things. Basically, brass bullets and steel bullets are not allowed to the U.S. Populace. They are allowed to law enforcement, to military, and to foreign. And so if there was something I could change, it would be opening that up to everyone. Because if you're allowed to have a gun, you got to have the bullets that are most effective. We have to make them out of copper, and so that's our copper offerings. There is that external hollow point. For law enforcement and military, there's a brass variety very similar that we make it out of. That's federally illegal, and so we don't have that one on the website. The one in the center there, the woodsman is meant mostly for bears and for defense in the woods. And so it will penetrate really deep, and that's the main thing there. It still creates a good wound. The external hollow point, though, the hallmark is there. It's creating the best wound, and so we get more cubic inches of volume of wound. And basically, with our 9 millimeter, it kind of creates a 5.56 type wound with it. That's the size of it. And so the other thing is that it's a really safe bullet. That's why that was the point of having it in insured security, is that it will stop inside reliably, and so they don't overpenetrate. And the reason being, a hollow point is kind of a snowflake. It has to dynamically change its shape in order to stop. But we're getting wounds like this out of bullets that don't change. And so you can see how we're casting off a lot of energy, and we're doing better than hollow points. We do that through the shape. Well, that shape is ready as it sits in the magazine, as it sits in the barrel, as it flies through the air. It doesn't have to do anything to change. And so we make it out of the hardest substrate we can. And at that point, it will go through barriers very well. So we're back to that barrier penetration doing well. But then when it hits its terminal target, it shuts down without shooting through. And so back to church security. If you ever had to take a shot in the sanctuary, there's no clear background, and so you got to make your hit, and then your bullet's got to do the job with one. It can't be you string them up 6 times with it and hope none of them overpenetrate. So we're looking for things that will do reliable, and so most of the reliability numbers in testing, and this is military based testing. That you can actually look it up. Viper Weapons Training is the one that did it out of Houston,
Okay.
and they've done extensive tests on it. We come up with a 99% reliability. So
What?
regardless of barrier, regardless of anything, our bullet's going to do the same thing every time. And
Wow.
not this in gel, it's going to go to the same depth. We have certain ones in pistols that will shoot through soft armor,
Mhm.
and in that, it doesn't give up any depth of penetration. It does the same thing with and without armor. And so with and without
Wow.
black, with and without plywood, it does the same thing. And because we don't have a hollow cavity, our our shape, our hollow divots are on the outside, not the inside. If we do hit drywall and it clings to it, it cleans it out on the first contact. Entrance wounds are big, like they're way above caliber.
Wow.
And then it also shuts down. It works on fluid, and so if the thing is fibrous or hard, it will cut through it because like a knife, that high pressure per square inch will cut through and move the fiber. If it is fluid, it works like a boat propeller, and so those flutes then cast out media, and they stretch it. And so the critical
Like a
thing,
wake.
we're stretching it beyond the point where the elasticity of the tissue is. And so we do permanent, where most handguns can't make a permanent wound. This design is actually making permanent wounds the same way that rifles do when they impact above 2,100 feet per second.
Boom. Outstanding. So good, man. This is awesome. God is good. Okay, so last final kind of closing questions. What would you say is probably the hardest thing that you've gone through, and how did the Father help you through that, for guys listening that are going through a hard time?
Sure. This point right now in my career, in my life, is probably the hardest point. And we talked about that
Yes.
that as soon as you achieve and you accomplish, you go through that next cycle,
Yeah.
and it's more difficult. Well, and that's the growth model. And so right now, as you go through your peaks and valleys, this is a valley in my life, but what I will say is my wife and I are now empty nesters, and he has given me a greater bride than I could have asked for. Like the things that were not there are solidified. She's absolutely amazing, and our marriage is at a peak as well. And so the things that I'm going through outside of that are not very difficult. And so my prayer life is on another level, and that's there. I also am receiving plenty of attack and criticism and hardship. We talked about mammon. This is that's typically where attack comes from. Is that if you do something good, the first one to show up is mammon.
Yep.
And so that's kind of where it's at. It will. I do see, as the peaks and valleys, like there's a lot of discipline that I'm gaining through this one.
Mhm. Yeah, no, 100%. And submission and obedience, it's like they protect us, through the Father. That's awesome. I love that you said that your prayer life is crucial. And as you guys listen, major takeaways is the prayer life is crucial. And then also like that your relationship, like these pillars in life, your relationship with your bride has been also pivotal in getting you through this season. And I also think it's a badge of honor that you're going through the hardest time of your life now, because it just means that you're where God wants you to be. I've actually gotten to this weird place now when I hear that my guys are going through something, I'm like, yes, like, because I know as long as they're in God's plan, like he's working in them a heavier weight of glory, like,
Oh, yeah.
and it's such an honor.
Good.
Yeah, man.
It's rough right now. Good.
Yeah.
Good.
This is the good stuff. That's man language. And then, when it's all said, what would you say is your peak, mountaintop? What was maybe your proudest moment, following Christ or in business?
For me, I'm a long range shooter. There's two things. I cannot operate an AR-15 to any type of proficiency against anyone. That's not my thing. With pistols, I do pretty good. With long guns, I do pretty good as well. And so I like shooting. We have a stable of AIs at the company that we do most of our testing in. And so that long range stuff really appeals to me. And I love pulling the trigger and not knowing what I did, but I see indications of trace along the way. And then I see the impact, and then I wait. And 2 seconds later, you get the ding back.
Yeah.
It's like doing the really long stuff, and that's so cathartic. That's for the beekeeping for my wife. That's my happy place. And so for that, when I look at that, that's raising my sons, because I pull the trigger and we start down that path, and you see little indications as they're flying. And it talks about archers that their sons are like arrows in their quiver.
Yeah.
So, if you understand the what's called the archer's paradox, It's that you put so much force into that arrow, and the arrow can't be too stiff. The arrow has to like bend and flex. And so it will bend on you and then do the springing thing for the first little bit of flight. And so when you see that go out there and you can see those fletchings going a little sideways, you think it's a problem every time. And it will snake its way in and it settles down. And then you see this parabolic curve of flight going, and then it hits the target. And so with that, watching my boys, and there are those times where you release them and there's no taking it back. You can't go grab a hold and put that arrow back in it. That would be, I see dads wanting to do that and everything. You got to let it run. You do your best to line it up. The sin in your life, meaning the missing of the target, like it's not some mystery term. It is just means sin. So the sin in your life puts them off target. You didn't do a good enough job with your arrow, and so watching them, and I got both my boys landing. My youngest is doing awesome at West Point, and he is making at 20 years old. He's making life decisions in what he does in his career there that are the long game, and watching him play that is amazing.
Wow.
He went, got there because of rugby, and was looking at what was going on. Had two real solid injuries, and looked at it, and he decided, I'm going to quit rugby. And I felt for him in that, and I wanted to. That's one of those times I wanted to grab a hold of that arrow and say, you got to reconsider. You put a lot of your life into this, and he might have walked onto the rugby field for his last time. And he said, Dad, here's the things that rugby got me here and did these things in my life. I'm being called to something greater, and I have to make choices. And so his game, his lifelong game, and what he wanted to play, he called it for what he could do greater, And so I saw that my oldest is now an entrepreneur. He's got his own. He bought a laser tube cutter. And so he's got his own business. He's fresh out of college, had his lease done and everything else, bought his equipment, and gets out of college, and Monday his business is up and running. Like he drove back and he's doing this and he's just crushing it. And so to see that discipline, I wish I had half the discipline he does. He works super hard, super intelligent. And so to watch these things and watch these arrows in flight, because it's that long game, and the little things you do, play with your sons, tell your daughters that they're pretty, and make it super hard for that husband to come in,
set the standards.
Yeah. Proof your daughter against picking the one guy. Give your sons, and that's the hard part, is that you got to put enough weight on them to try them and to strengthen them. And you gotta also give them that room for failure. Entrepreneurship is all about failure. If you are not failing 15, 20 times a day, you're not doing it. And so you have to get those failures out of the way. You have to learn. And so once you do this, don't get stuck in that rut. Go find new failures.
Yep.
And then do better and harder and worse things the whole life long, and continue to grow. Don't go stagnant. And so that's the only way you grow stagnant is when you get success after success after success. Chase your failures.
Yes, I love that, man. That's awesome. And the fruit bears it out, and what your boys are doing and where they're at. You shall know them by their fruit. Gentlemen, this is massive. And I love the references to archery that are all found in the Bible, and sin being an archery term just means to miss the mark. But the strength and your comparison of, hey, Dad, how much you're missing is something your children are observing. And this is the standard that they may adopt. And so you're trying to get them on target, and that starts with you getting on target by the grace of God and effort and discipline, right? And soundness, discipline. I love it. At the end of the day, how would you like to be remembered, when all is said and done?
There's some, so I think the world changes not from the pulpit, but it changes from products, because whatever you produce, your fruit is what you're going to be remembered by. And so there's very few things, maybe the civil rights movement, but if you look at the iPhone, changed the world. The internal combustion engine changed the world. And so we do these things. I want to be an inventor. I want a legacy there and everything else. At the end of the day, there are those things, and I put a lot of my time and energy to that. I want to pick my tribe, and I want my tribe to say, there was a quote from I think it's the 13th warrior or something. And one of the guys dies, and his comment is, "We will miss his sword tonight." And so
Yeah.
when I'm gone, I want my tribe to say it was easier fighting when Joshua was here.
Yeah.
And so I want, regardless what it is, I want to be that encouragement. I want to be that piece of wisdom. I want to be that positive in it. And so when I'm gone, I just want, I want people to say it was easier. He carried his weight.
Yep. 100%. I love it, man. That's awesome contribution. And then the final question, the world's ending. You got 30 seconds to give your best advice. You're ending. The world continues. You got 30 seconds. What would you say?
So I believe that everyone has that one thing that God put His fingerprints on you for, and I think there is a charge the hill speech in me. And when with the company and I get to cast the vision that this is what we're doing, this is where safety is at. Swim hard, we're going to the shore, and so there's and that is the everyday thing, casting the vision. If you're familiar with integrators and visionaries, I am 100% a visionary. And so but being able to cast that vision, say charge the hill, that this is what it is. My namesake Joshua it comes out, and he like, with all the smack talk and everything, says if serving the gods in Egypt, if serving the gods beyond the Jordan, or this side of the Jordan, or the land that you're now living in, so the guys that we just kicked their asses and you've taken over their homes and you do this, if you want to serve their gods, go ahead. As for me and my household, we're serving the Lord. And so that was his speech, and I don't think I could do any better. I would call it out. You guys do whatever you want. For me, I'm gonna serve the Lord, and I think that's the final note I would kick out on.
Heck yeah, man. And that's the ethos. Josh, it's such an honor. It's a privilege. You're a wealth of knowledge, the depth, and you're the type of guy. I mean, we had multiple the principles. I hope the guys listen to this a couple times. Thank you for your time, your attention, your contributions, and it's an honor to be connected with you. Where can people find you before we get out of here? Where can people find G9 and find you and all that?
If you search us on the website, that's an easy way to get direct. We answer all the questions. There's nothing that goes undone. I pride ourselves on the customer service. If you're looking for the big box stores, Optic Planet and Midway carry our stuff, it's pretty easy to find there. We have a few vendors, but they're good, and so you can get on our website for regions where it's at, or order direct from us.
Outstanding. All right, brother. It's an honor and a privilege. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God. Let's go.
Boom. What's up, guys? So check it out. Podcast, all the free content, all the things are supported by Patreon. So if you're listening to any of these episodes and it's a blessing to you, it's helping you in life, we now have our Patreon platform up. It's also a really cool place where I consolidate all my content, and so you actually get to see everything, because the algorithms, for whatever reason, don't always show you everything. But anyways, if you want to support the podcast, this stuff's not free. Getting these videos edited, published, paying people to do all this stuff, syndication strategy, putting it all out, it ain't free. But it's an honor to do so, and I believe it's my work, and it's what God wants me to do. So if you guys want to join forces and help support that work, I want to invite you to check in the show notes, join us on Patreon. The whole give a cup of coffee. For what you pay for a cup of coffee, you can really help me out quite a bit, actually getting this thing going, keeping this thing going. All right. God bless. Semper Fi. Thank you for being here. We love you guys. Boom. When it comes to the technology you use to protect your home, there's nothing better than Deep Sentinel. AI-driven, human-monitored technology that will keep you and your family safe for the same price you're paying for whatever Ring doorbell system you have. Check out Deep Sentinel. It's such an honor to join forces with these guys. They should be in every single house in the world. Get real-time Overwatch for you and your loved one. And for 10% off, depending on when you're watching this, don't forget to use code Byron at checkout.
Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God.